Jambo, jambo. Jambo watoto wa Afrika. Yeah.
This is Untitled Africa, and today we are profiling Wandia Njoya.
I finished my A-levels in Kenya High School, and then I went to Kenyatta University for my bachelor's and my master's degree, and then I went to the US, to Penn State for my PhD. I came back and I worked for a while, and then I met this fabulous man called Chris. Yes, he's a writer like me, and so we share a lot in common in terms of we reflect a lot about life. He understood me, and I think I understand him. Yeah, so we are kind of soulmates, although I asked God why it took so long for us to meet.
Wandia Njoya thinks and writes so much about Pan-African history.
I was diagnosed in 2009. That's about, 7 years ago? Yeah. I think I didn't panic because I had been getting checked. And I was getting checked because I was aware. And that's why I'm so passionate about education, because education makes us make better decisions. So I was able to keep on going for checkups. So mine was diagnosed early, and I went through the treatment, and within 2 years I was done. So for me, health and education come together because when people are more aware, then it becomes life-saving as opposed to being ignorant. I've been hearing many stories of people who detect when it's too late to do anything, and just because they didn't know and they didn't have exposure. And so for me, that's what education is about. It's exposing people so that they make good decisions in life.
She cites that her mentors and icons are Frantz Fanon, Mishera Mogo, Nikki Giovanni, and Tiyambe Zeleza.
Like I said, I became very aware of the advantage I had as an educated person. The fact that I could ask the right questions. I knew when I was not sure who to ask, where to get resources from. So I became very aware of how education is tied to health. And that's why I believe that we need people to be educated so that, and I'm not just talking about education for jobs, but education for self-awareness so that they make good decisions. It also made me aware during my treatment of the inequality in terms of treatment, because the reason I could get treated was because I had a job and I had health insurance. But even that health insurance has run out now. If the cancer comes back, the insurance will not pay for me. So I became very much aware of the public health facilities and the need for more health care, for cancer care for ordinary people. At the time when I was finishing my treatment, Kenyatta Hospital, I think it still is the only public hospital that was treating cancer in the whole country. That meant, you needed resources or you needed to have insurance. So I became aware that education and economic resources is a lifeline for so many people. There are people who are dying of cancer not because, just because they are poor. That's it, and I'm always aware of that inequality.
Her life was shaped by growing up in a family where books by Chinua Achebe, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Frantz Fanon, and Paulo Freire could be found in the family bookshelf. As a teenager and a young adult, she read these books, although her understanding gained a new dimension as a student in the United States and France.
For the longest time, I thought I was alone. And so social media is the place where I find, like you said, I find like-minded people. And so I'm able to share my ideas there. But I think also social media became an avenue for me because I was not finding as many avenues for self-expression. So social media was it. So that's why I've expressed myself a lot on social media. I also haven't had enough time to publish academically. So social media is my publication. That's where I publish. So all my academic work is on social media. And it has actually been cited by a number of scholars. So I must be doing something right. But yeah, social media is the democratic opportunity for me to express my views. Yes.
There, she came into contact with broad racism, and everything she read began to fall into place.
I think people just need to be secure that they have the right to speak out on social media. Of course, there are concerns about our responsibility, but me, I've been saying, if it wasn't for social media, I would have no voice. I would have no voice because right now my current situation doesn't allow me to publish as much as I could. So social media is the voice for many, many Kenyans. Yeah, and we've been able to make our voice heard through it. So I would say that it must be protected with all we've got. And usually I'm always encouraging bloggers to keep defending our freedom of expression, because if I don't speak in social media, where else am I going to speak? There's nowhere. The politicians have hogged up all the public space. So this is where Raia like us can talk.
She is the head of language and performing arts at Desta University in Nairobi, Kenya.
Actually, I was just good in it when I was in school, and I just thought it was a good thing to continue doing. But then when I got to university, I was more interested in education, especially after I went for teaching practice and I saw that I can actually have an impact on students, I can form their ideas and that kind of thing. So that's how I got into education. And then French, I just kept on going because as a professional I had to continue in the same course. So I just finished. But as I did it, I also discovered another side of Africa, which is now what I have grown to love about my studies, that I have been able to study other African countries. So that's what I like about the studies I have done.
Ijambo watoto wa Afrika.
Welcome to the show. This is I Lead Africa, where we raise the levels of leadership dialogues. We engage with African leaders, game changers, business mavericks, and the gurus of personal development and productivity. With me today is Dr. Wandia Njoya, the head of Department of Language and Performing Arts at Desta University. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. I consider a country's measure of democracy, equality, and freedom to be its schools and hospitals and not its polling stations. This is a statement you said.
Yes.
Talk to us about your conviction.
Okay. I believe that a country is supposed to enable its citizens to be the best they can be. And so what a nation is supposed to be a group of people who want to achieve a certain goal. And we cannot achieve that goal unless we are healthy and unless we are educated. We need, of course, health is obvious. We need to be alive, but we also need education to be able to make decisions, to learn our environment, and to be able to respect one another. So health and education, I consider them the most important things that a country needs to provide to its citizens. And so for me, that is more important than who we are voting. And even the people we vote are supposed to help us achieve those goals in terms of education and health. So that's why I consider the schools and the hospitals more important than the polling stations, because we can't even make good political decisions at the polling station if we are not healthy and if we are not educated. So that's what I meant, that to me it's the fundamentals of our nation, that people are healthy and they are knowledgeable.
Okay.
Yeah.
In discussing Mariama Ba's novel, you contend that African governments from since independence have made African professionals useless as it pertains to nation building. Yes. Expound on this.
Okay, I was talking about in the 1960s, a lot of African professionals, especially those who had gone to university either in Makerere or Dar es Salaam, or they went to the US or the UK, a lot of them had the hope of coming back to Africa to work and build the nation. But what happened after independence was a different story. First of all, even though they might have been appointed into leadership positions, they clashed with politicians over differences of opinion on the way to go, which is normal. It's normal for there to be a difference of opinion between politicians and professionals. But what happened was that the politicians, instead of encouraging dialogue, they sort of started hitting back at the professionals, and so we see professionals going into exile, or some were even detained. So the politicians did not cooperate and use their skills and their energies to develop the country. So now what has happened is that the professionals who are left behind are fighting, petty battles sometimes with other politicians or with management, and so we start to see, for example, doctors not being employed by the counties. We see, like the other day they reported that we don't have enough marine pilots because the pilots had gone abroad. And I think people are going abroad, unfortunately, we think it's because they want better salaries. But actually most African professionals would like to work at home. They would like to contribute to their countries. But the problem is they're not being given the freedom and the space to make decisions and to do their professional duty. And that frustrates them. So they go to countries where their professional opinion will be valued. And that's why you're finding that professionals are doing better. Kenyan professionals are doing better abroad than they're doing here. It's not because they're getting a better salary, it's because they're being allowed to express themselves and to contribute to society. Their opinions are valued, and they can see themselves making a difference. So that's what I was talking about, that we need to create the environment to allow professionals to do their duty for Africa.
True.
Yeah.
You recently wrote that tragedy tells us that a king must suffer for the redemption of humanity, because the king matters enough.
Yes.
But when a poor person suffers, it is not tragedy, it is injustice. That is a profound statement, I must say. What does it mean?
Okay, I'm going to see if I can explain it. The idea of tragedy is a space where society comes into terms with its contradictions. Contradictions could be anything like between life and death, and tragedy is like, for example, when we mourn. When we mourn, we are accepting death, but we are also affirming life. So that is what tragedy does. It makes us accept our contradictions as a society. Or even, you can look at the lions that escaped from the national park, and the fact that human beings also have their needs. So bringing those needs together and trying to see which way should we go is what tragedy is about. What the Greeks would do is that they would have a play and they would watch all these events so that they're able to tell what decision should we make when there's a clash between different aspects of life. So if you look at now the play in the tragedy, usually it was somebody important who died. He was killed because he did something that offended the gods. In Greek tragedy, he offended the gods, and so he suffered. But through his suffering, he brought redemption to the community. And that's what even Christians believe, that Christ died because he mattered enough. He was the Son of God, he was very important to God. And so because he died and because his death was important, then human beings are redeemed. So I think the idea is that when somebody important dies, we notice and it redeems us. But when people who are poor and unknown die, you can forget.
True.
And you can even see how in the same space we had the former First Lady passed away, and we had the people at Huruma, and you can see the difference in the way the two events were treated. You know, there was a state function, everything was filmed on live TV, but for the Huruma victims, we don't even know their names. So God takes care of them, because he knows that, you know, if you're the first lady or the president, people will notice, but if you're not big, no one will notice. So that injustice is what God doesn't like. And so our laws and even our faith are supposed to take care of the vulnerable, because when the rich suffer, we notice, but not when the poor suffer. So God takes care of them by reminding us that that is injustice. Yeah.
Tell them the truth, there's nothing to lose, no. You keep the fire burning.
You have expressed concern with how the society creates and maintains stereotypes for both men and women.
Yes.
What are these stereotypes and what role do they play in our self-perception?
Okay. I think, you know, these days people talk about neglect of the boy child and that men are not being taken care of. But I think it's important to know that the stereotypes now that we are seeing of men are there to reinforce the stereotypes against women. So women are seen as people who don't work, they don't earn a living, they're not supposed to be educated, they're not supposed to be vocal, they're not supposed to be seen, they're just supposed to take care of others. And also that they don't care about politics, and if they do, they are called vocal or angry. So those are stereotypes which we have inherited so that we keep women down. But to maintain those stereotypes, now you have to create stereotypes about men. And one of the stereotypes that really annoys me is the stereotype that men go to work and women stay at home. That's a very colonial stereotype. And it started in the 50s and 60s, because when the colonial people, the colonialists came, they wanted land, and they wanted, the settlers wanted land, and the colonial government wanted taxes. So what do? They grab the land from the locals and force the locals to go and work for the white man so that they can be paid in cash. And then that cash is now used as tax for the local government. So really, it was only men who were being taxed like this, and the women were left at home to take care of their children. And then also they introduced the Kipande system, where it's only men who are getting the pass to enter the cities, because the jobs were only for men. Education was only for men. So that is how we came to the situation where employment was mainly for men, and work at home was mainly for women. But now men are repeating this as if it is African culture. It is not African culture. Women have always worked, they have built homes, they have fed families. Men have gone to either hunt or they are traders. That was what was there before. But now a colonial system came and men are adopting that as African. It's not African. And so these are the types of stereotypes that are affecting women, and they're being reinforced by men because men don't know their history. They don't know the history of how some of these things came about. The other stereotypes about men that I'm concerned about are consumerism. You know, because men are the ones who were given the money first, then material goods become attached to them. So even alcohol, we are seeing adverts associating alcohol with manhood, cars with manhood. And what does that do? It's making men feel that they need to steal from the public to be a man. And yet manhood should be about society, about nurturing, not nurturing only children, but nurturing the public, taking care of us, all of us. And that's what has been lost in our history as as a colonized, ex-colonized society. Yeah.
Okay. You have written that the experiences of Rwanda, Kenya, and typical African countries are rooted in the sense of being African. The political circumstances that incubated the genocide against Tutsis were to be found in many places in the continent. And you say that Rwanda and Africa can move forward by committing herself to remember. Expound on this idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's just even linked to what I'm saying about even men, because the reason men are perpetuating these stereotypes is because they don't know their history. And for the case of Rwanda, it was, they were given, the colonialists came to Rwanda and they found these two social groups and they called them tribes. And they wrote a different history than from what the original Rwandan history was. And based on that new writing of history, now the governments of independence set the groups against each other. And that's what happened in many countries. If you look at Kenya, for example, when the colonialists were here, they did not allow Kenyans to form political parties across tribe. So they said if you want to form a political party, you must form it with your own tribesmates. You cannot have different tribes in the same political party. So that's what has fed into the tribalism that we have today, because even now in 1969 when Jaramogi had the KPU, it was banned, but I think it was partly banned because it had different tribes in it. So that is what has fed into now our current situation where people are voting on tribe, political parties are made on tribal lines. So we need to remember where we have come from in order to understand why we are where we are. So that we stop saying that Kenyans are naturally tribal. They are not naturally tribal. It's our history that has made us that way. So that's why we need to remember so that we can undo what happened to us.
Okay. And still on Rwanda, the nation has grown because of the conscious decision to include women at the heart of building the nation.
Yeah.
What must be done to really ensure that women are an integral part of the nation building?
I don't know. I think mostly in Kenya, we are talking about Kenya.
Yeah.
We need a change of minds, the mindset. Currently, just yesterday, we started this discussion on Twitter where these ladies came together on a program and they were talking about women's issues, and the backlash was, why are we not talking about the boy child? And so I'm beginning to sense that Kenyans have not understood that freedom for women is freedom for everybody. Yeah, you can't have a section of society in chains and the rest of us free. We cannot diversify oppression. We cannot diversify dominance. We have to be free. Everybody has to be free. And that's what Thomas Sankara said. He said, the revolution, we cannot have a revolution unless without women's emancipation. So I think right now, the way I'm feeling right now is that Kenyans need to understand that freedom is for everybody. It's for women, it's for the disabled, it's for the youth, it's for children, it's for men. We can't have some groups being discriminated against and other groups thriving. That means the whole country is not free. We have to all be free. And so I think that understanding needs to be, I don't know how we can make Kenyans understand that women's freedom is freedom for everybody. It's freedom for the marginalized, it's freedom for the disabled, it's freedom for the vulnerable and for the poor. Everyone must be free in this Kenya. And I think that's what we need to affirm in order for people to understand why it's important for women to have more space to be themselves, because Kenya benefits. We all benefit. Yeah, and those women are going to raise men. So wouldn't you want, free men cannot be raised by women in chains. So everybody has to be free. And it's possible, but we need to believe it first. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much.
It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you very much.
We have come to the end of the show. This has been Islet Africa, and I have been with Dr. Wandia Njoya. My name is Sarah Yunis. Until next time, God bless you.
Hello, hello. Hello, Africa. Jambo, jambo. E jambo watoto wa Afrika.